All right, guys, how's it going out there? Rooster here in Tennessee, roostercb.com, and a little topic of discussion video I want to get into here. Probably just basic information or common knowledge for those who have been in the hobby for a long time. Again, people are getting into the radio business that have no experience or very little experience, and it's a common question that comes into me. So anytime I have a repetitive question or a concern, I figure it's time to do a video and talk about it a little bit. And if I can help a handful of people, then glad to do so. Definitely not the resident genius, know-it-all, or anything like that. So a lot of the stuff that I share will just be from my experience. And I had a customer message me yesterday, and I also listened to a conversation on the radio that kind of pertained to this. And what I want to talk about is when you're building your station, whether that be in a mobile or whether that be on a base, the most important components of that station are from the outside coming in. Now, what I mean by that is whether you're going down the road and going through the mountains of West Virginia or you're out in the cornfields of Nebraska, your setup, the range of your setup can change in a mobile. The same thing goes for a base station, okay? What works at one person's outfit, and they can be the king of the county or the baddest station in their state, doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work at another person's location. The terrain around you, your elevation, and sometimes not even your elevation, just, the height of your antenna to the ground. So what I mean by that is if you're on the side of a bluff and your elevation is 2,000 feet, you're going to perform different than someone that's in the center of a mountain that's elevation is 2,000 feet, okay? They're not going to get that same bounce effect. And that's a whole different type of conversation. But the reason I bring this up is this customer yesterday, or potential customer, I should say, he's not the first to mention this or to say this, but he messaged me, and I don't have the exact text, but he had a real concern. He's getting discouraged with the hobby because he mentioned he had bought several different radios, and we're talking high dollar radios here, Striker 497, and I don't remember what else. He's running a mobile setup, and he can't talk. No matter what he puts in there, he feels like technicians are giving him the runaround. He's buying radios that aren't performing the way they should, and he's getting discouraged with it, and he was wanting to buy a radio or inquiring about possibly buying a radio. Now, could I have just sold this gentleman a radio and said, hey, man, I got the fix for you right here. I'm going to sell you one of these all the way 955s, and you're going to be able to talk 50 miles up and down the road. Okay, a lot of people do that. This person's problem isn't with their radio, and I want to circle back to what I said about building your station from the outside going in. Location is the number one most important thing. The location you're in and the terrain around you, okay? Just for instance, my location, I talk very well in all but maybe one direction. I can take a handheld walkie-talkie and go outside and talk 5 or 10 miles, certain directions, okay? Doesn't mean you're going to take that same handheld walkie-talkie and go, to the next operator's house and have that same performance. The next thing is your antenna. Okay? A good SWR does not mean a good antenna. A dummy load has a good SWR. How far can you talk on a dummy load? Well, not very, I'll tell you. Maybe a handful of miles. Maybe a couple of miles or something. All right? So when you say, well, it's not my antenna, I've got a good SWR, doesn't mean anything. For instance, a little Willie antenna, to me, that's the most pathetic antenna made. And I'm sorry if anybody loves those things, but I'm just using this as an example. It's the most pathetic antenna made. You're better off with a handheld, in my opinion. You can tune that thing down to a perfect SWR. It's not going to help it talk any further. Okay? All right, so if you're in a bad location on a base, you have a bad antenna, you're already up against it. You're going to have to do so much to overcome those two obstacles, because those are the two most important parts of your setup. Again, building from the outside, coming in, the most important parts that determine how far or how effective you're going to be able to talk. Coax. Okay? You can look up loss factors on Coax online. It's not a secret or anything. I recommend, if you're running, if you're running 100 feet of coax or more, and you're trying to run between, 1,000 watts and 10,000 watts PEP, I recommend LMR 400 Ultraflex. Okay? In a mobile application, if you're running less than 3,000 or 4,000 watts PEP, I would recommend LMR 240 Ultraflex. Some people like RG213. That's fine as well. It's a little bit more lossy than the Ultraflex, but it's not going to make a huge difference, okay? Those are the coaxes I recommend. If you're running anything else, results may vary. Everything that you put more money into your station is only going to help you do better. You can be in a bad location and have everything else right and kind of help overcome a bad location. You're not going to ever completely, overcome it, but it can help your odds to do better up against being in a bad spot. If you have a bad antenna, you're in a bad location, chances are you're not going to be happy, no matter how much money you throw at this hobby. Next, a lot of people aren't going to like this. They're going to disagree. Your amplifier, okay? And the reason I've got these radios sitting out in front of you is to kind of talk about this. That radio in the middle is a Cobra 19 GTL. I've ran it in one of my mobiles before. I taught skip on that thing several times barefooted. I had a 7-foot skip shooter antenna. I was in a decent location. I had a good antenna, and I taught skip on that radio barefoot. And there are people out there running amplifiers that can't get their name called no matter what they do. It's because they don't have the rest of their setup right. Now, what I want to talk about, amplifier being the next most important chain of your setup. All these radios in front of us here, okay? None of these are going to overcome a large amplifier. You can buy a $1,000 radio, or you can buy, just say this unit in 78 LTX over here for a couple $100 and some change, tuned up, and you can hook an amplifier to it. Now, which one is going to talk better? Just because you have more money in one doesn't mean it's going to out-talk the other, okay? The power output or your amplifier is the next most important thing. I can hook that Cobra 19 GTL up to a decent-sized amplifier, and you guys are not going to know the difference. I'm not going to be able to talk any less, I'm not going to have any less range than I would with that $900 RCI 99N4 sitting behind it. As a matter of fact, I could take that Cobra 19 and pair it with a fairly large amplifier that does more power than that RCI 99N4 and talk further than that RCI 99N4. Now, I'm not saying stop buying RCI 99N4s and stop buying Striker 955s and start buying Cobra 19s. It's all up to what you like, which brings me to my next point. When you're picking out a radio, pick a radio that has the features that you like on it and that sounds the way you like. It has a good receive. It has a good sound. You like the features of it. And then customize your outfit to that. I rarely ever suggest someone buy a radio based on the power output it does. Okay? Strictly based on that. Now, there's reasons to buy radios like Striker 955s. Let's say that, you really like a 955 and you want that radio to do the best it can do. So you pay to have all the way mods done for it, for example. And then you're next in line, you say, well, I need to run an amplifier with this, so I want a 4-pill. Okay, and then you say, well, I'd like to do a little more power, so you run your 955 into a 4-pill into, let's say, a 16C. Okay, you've completed your chain or whatever, but you didn't pick the radio just based on the power output that it does, because even with this 99N4, okay, it does what, 500-600 watts, in that ballpark. You pick this radio out because you like it. It has a built-in amplifier section into it, and then you can pair it with a 16-pill and not have to run a driver with it. You like the way it sounds, you like the features it has, great. But guess what, guys? If you're somebody that likes plain Jane, you don't like fancy stuff, you like the features that unit in 78 LTX has, you can pair up an amplifier setup and a good antenna with that 78 LTX and talk every bit as far as you can with that RCI 99N4. Now, a lot of people aren't going to tell you that because they want to sell you these high-dollar radios, and they're in the business to do that. I like selling high-dollar radios too, but I don't like selling to people, and that's not what they want, or set themselves up for failure. Again, building the station from the outside, coming in. I heard a local talking. I think it was this morning I actually heard him talking. It was this morning. And he's relatively new to the hobby, I think. I'm not going to mention his handle or anything, but it seems like a nice guy. And he was talking about he has a setup in one of his vehicles. And he was talking about he had a President McKinley in there. And he initially said, well, I don't like the radio because I can't get out very far. I don't feel like I can hear people, and I don't feel like I can talk very far on that radio. Okay, there's a chance that the radio is not performing properly. But he caught himself and he said, well, maybe it's not the radio, maybe it's the antenna I have on there. I just have a little 4-foot antenna. And he said, maybe the radio's fine. I don't know. It could just be my antenna. And that led into a conversation with him and another gentleman talking about different antennas, and he recommended a Stereo Performer 5000, which is a great mobile antenna. And he after having a discussion, he's like, yeah, maybe it is just my antenna. Maybe I need to get a different antenna. That's what I want a lot of people to think about. When you're having trouble with your setup, it's easy to point the blame. Well, this damn radio that I got from Rooster, I can't talk 2 miles up the road with this thing. It ain't worth a shit. Or I got this damn Striker 497 from Walcott, and I can't talk anywhere on this thing. I can't hear people. I can't talk to people. Think about why that is, okay? You can buy a $1,000 Longhorn, the most powerful radio that Ranger offers. And if you hook that thing up to a sorry antenna, a sorry piece of coax, and you're in a bad location, guess what? You see that little Cobra 19 sitting in the middle there? I can take that little cheap-ass radio and kill that Longhorn with it. A lot of people don't believe that, but I'm telling you, the radio is the least important part of your setup when it comes to the range that you can expect. I know that's hard for it to sink into a lot of people's heads, but that's just the truth. Now, that being said, let's say we have 2 identical setups in the same identical location, and you say, well, which radio is going to out-talk the other? Of course, that 99N4 is going to talk further than that Cobra 19 GTL under the exact same circumstances. Why? Because that 99N4 is a 500 or 600 watt radio, and that Cobra 19 is, it's hopped up, but it's a 35, 40 watt radio. Okay, that is when, in a sense, the radio does matter then. But it's only because the power output difference. So, location, number 1. Some people can't help it. If they're on a base, they just live in a bad location. That's why a lot of people that live in bad locations like to build big mobiles, because they can go to where the hot spots are at. That's the advantage of a mobile. You're not fixed. You bought your home and your property for $300,000. For most of us, it's not practical to sell it just so we can get in a better talking spot. Okay, there's some people out there doing that, but Most people aren't going to be able to afford to do that. So they build a mobile and they can just drive wherever they want and talk, whether you're up on a mountain, by some water or whatever. So location is number one. Your antenna is the next most important. Okay? Little Willie ain't going to talk. I don't care if you hook a Longhorn up to it. You ain't going to talk. Not going to talk good anyway. A dummy load. It's got a good SWR. Doesn't mean it's a good talking antenna. SWR has literally almost nothing to do with the signal strength of an antenna. Now, obviously, if you have a very high SWR, your power is not going to be getting out the antenna. It's going to be coming back in and burning your equipment up. But an SWR is not a good indicator of a good talking antenna. There are some shitty antennas out there that have good SWR that don't talk worth a flip. Okay? Next, your coax. Especially if you're running lengthy runs of coax. Man, guys, I have seen people run 150 feet of little mini 8 clear coax. And they're like, well, my watt meter says I'm doing 2,500 watts. I don't understand why somebody that's on a dang 1,500 watt amplifier is killing me. Well, your watt meter is at the beginning of your setup. After your watt meter, that power has to travel 150 feet before it gets to your antenna. Guess what? If you're using crappy coax, you're losing. You're losing the battle there. You might as well have bought a 4-pill instead of an 8, because that's the amount of power that's getting to your antenna. Which brings me to this conversation. What is the point of buying a large amplifier, expensive radio, if you're just going to cheap out on the coax and the antenna? There's not one. Again, the coax is a good example. You take a 2,000 watt amplifier, you've got lossy coax. By the time you get to the antenna, you're only doing 1,500 watts. Guess what? You would have been better off to save your money from your amplifier and put that towards your coax. That way, all the power, or the majority of the power from your amplifier, is actually getting to the antenna. Again, location, antenna, coax, and then we can say either amplifier or the power output that you're doing. That's very important, okay? Most of the time, it's done with an amplifier, but there are radios out there that have internal amplifiers. Very important. You can take a Cobra 19, 2,000 watts, and talk just as good as a TRE Top 1 and 2,000 watts. Doesn't matter how you get there, how you get to that amount of power. You can use whatever radio you like. If you like a Cobra 19, build your station around a Cobra 19. If you like a TRE Top 1, build your station around it. And then the radio being the final part, aside from microphone or whatever. That's just a preference thing. But your radio, when I tell people, what's the best radio? There is no best. Now, there's the most reliable radios out there. There's the most powerful radios out there. There's the radios that have the best receive, the radios that are most stable on sideband, the radios that have the loudest audio or sound. There's no best. I like a Cobra 1000 GTL. Okay, that's a 40-something-year-old radio. A lot of people like newer stuff. I'm not saying that my Cobra 1000 is the best. It's the best for me. It has the features that I like and that I enjoy. There's no one best radio out there. If I had to list my top 5, I don't even know where I would start. Obviously, Striker 955 is way up there. I like the Uniden 78 LTX. Myself, it would be in my top 5. It's not going to be in a lot of people's top 5. It would be in mine. The TRE Top 1, that's another one I like. And I just happen to have these sitting in front of me here. And I do like the Ranger 99 N series radios. They're similar to the Top 1, except they have an amp built into them. But again, you can hook an amp to this radio, this TRE Top 1, and you can talk just as good as that 99 N4 if you have the antenna, the coax, and the location to do it. So I know I went a little bit long on this, guys. I'm not talking from a script or anything. Just something I want to put out there because I feel like people get confused and they get disappointed. They go out here and buy these expensive radios and think it's going to be magic. They come home and can just plug it in and should be able to talk all over the world. It does not work that way. Okay? Money, you know, you can spend a little money or less money and talk great, and you can spend a lot of money and not talk worth a darn because you spend it in the wrong place. All right? And that discourages people a lot of times. They think, well, I've spent all this money and I can't talk worth a flip. Could be something simple like changing antennas, parking in a different location, moving your antenna to a higher, you know, getting it a little bit higher off the ground. That's a big factor. You know, that kind of plays into the location thing. When you're talking local, generally speaking, the higher your antenna is, the better you're going to talk. Okay? When you're talking skip, just because, you know, let's just say, for an example, that you have a guy in California talking on a 4-element beam, and you're like, man, he is out there just killing it in skip. Like, he talks everywhere. He keys on everybody. He beats everybody, and he's only on a little 18-foot 4-element beam. You take that same 4-element beam to your house, and you're getting your hind end kicked by everybody. What's the difference? 2 different locations. What works good in someone's location might not work good in someone else's. Just food for thought, guys. Feel free to comment, disagree, agree. Let me know what you think. Again, I'm not any type of guru, engineer, self-proclaimed expert. What I share with you guys on this channel is strictly from my experience, and it's out there to help people. It's not to help me sell more Cobra 19s or, you know, whatever. It's not to further any sort of agenda or anything. It's just to help some folks out. I appreciate everybody. Love the hobby. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate everybody's business. Again, questions, comments, shoot me a text, 423-299-3535. Check out the website, roostercb.com. Everybody have a good one. Rooster in Tennessee. See you. Bye.